Hi, this is part two of The Earth is My Mother, I Shall Not Want. So, the reason why I also said that this video, the timing of doing this on the 1st of January 2026, is probably appropriate is because, another aspect of like the Earth being our mother is that we really ought to live in sync with her, right? So yesterday it was New Year's Eve, right? And today is the 1st of January. But this calendar that we're using is patently out of sync with the rhythms of the earth, particularly for us here in the Southern Hemisphere. It's midsummer here. We've just had the summer solstice on the 21st. And it doesn't, the 1st of January, the beginning of the year, starting in the middle of our summer, doesn't work with the rhythms of the earth that we are living with in the Southern Hemisphere. It works much better for the Northern Hemisphere because there it's winter, but they've had the solstice. So now the sun is getting closer, the days are getting longer. It's a new beginning, right? And it's going to be spring just now, right? There are some people in the Northern Hemisphere who also talking about the 1st of January, saying that this is not the beginning of the year. The year begins when the earth starts to wake up again with spring, right? But for them, it is much closer than it is for us. In fact, for us, our New Year is generally celebrated in September sometime. And I think it corresponds to when the rain starts, the rains that bring the earth back to life after winter, right? And the Khoi and the San hold a particular type of rain to be very sacred. It's that rain that falls very softly. It's not really drizzle. It's almost like a mist. It falls, but like very, very soft rain. Because drizzle is more like, I don't know, like a toned down shower. You know what I'm saying? But this is like, I don't know the name of this rain. Okay, maybe it is drizzle. Anyway, point is, it's that very, very fine rain, that falls very softly, like it's like a mist. And, it will like drip down in drops from the roof. And it's very, very fine. It's very quiet rain. And that rain is sacred to the Khoi and the San because it seeps into the earth. It settles on the earth and it seeps into the earth. And that's the most nourishing rain. And that rain is actually what they use to baptize their children. So they wait for the second day of that rain. And if you notice, it does last for 1 or 2 days, So they wait for the second day of that rain. And then on the second day, they put their babies on the earth and let the rain fall on the baby. And that's how the baby is baptized. Okay. So if we are going to start maturing in our relationship to the earth, we must start to respect the rhythms and the cycles of the earth where we are and work with them so that we can have that relationship with the earth, and not find ourselves constantly disjointed from the earth, because the earth is a living being. She has an electromagnetic field. That electromagnetic field affects our bodies. It affects our electromagnetic field. It affects our consciousness. And what is consciousness? In many respects, consciousness is like a form of electricity, right? So that's why I guess your brain is like an electric powerhouse. Your neurons are electric. They conduct electricity. Also your heart, it conducts electricity. So if we can get more into sync with the rhythms of the earth, then it will also help us to create a much more beneficial symbiotic relationship with the earth and move us away from this parasitic relationship that we have with the earth. Because right now, all we do is see her as an object. And isn't it interesting that in our objectification of the earth, we are also easily able to objectify each other and ourselves, and objectify the plants and the animals and the minerals, all these minerals that are in the earth. They also play a role beyond helping us to accumulate wealth. They add to the health of the planet. I don't know how, but they all have a frequency which they contribute to the well-being of the planet. Just the same way, like if you have an iron deficiency, you'll become anemic. who's to say that when we extract minerals from the earth in the way we do, we are not depriving the earth of vital minerals that she needs to stay healthy? I'm not saying people shouldn't seek to live comfortable lives where they're able to do whatever they want. But even our pursuit of wealth is not respecting the fact that the earth is our mother and that we shall not want. We won't want because everything we need, we get from her. There's no reason for the scarcity and the lack and the poverty that we see because everything comes from her, But unfortunately, and I've said this before, there's a consciousness that has hijacked this earth matrix and is using it to siphon the earth's life force and the life force of the inhabitants of the earth, And so we have a situation where instead of having economic activity which distributes resources according to people's needs and wants and desires, and in ways which makes them easily accessible to them. Yes, on the basis of exchange, sure, but exchange which is within the means of the people to perform, right? Instead of doing that, we have a system where exchange is limited purely to certain means of exchange. So whereas the creativity of the human being might find a means of exchange which is not the normal means, but which is still acceptable to their fellow human being based on whatever negotiated agreement they come to on exchange of means, on exchange of the basis of exchange of goods and services for value. We've been conditioned to believe that if it's not the paper money that you get from the Reserve Bank, then there's no other means of exchange. Obviously, people know that there's bartering and people do it every day in ways that they don't even notice that they're bartering, right? But if we can start to understand that there are ways to generate electricity, for example, without using fossil fuels. I've spoken about the way that magnets and copper wire, creating a coil with electrodes is a way, with doing all the mechanics that you need to do, is a way to generate electricity. We have the sun. The sun's energy on its own, can cook food under certain circumstances. If you have like a box with mirrors in a sort of convex shape that directs the rays of the sun to a certain point, and then it heats that point up, and then you can cook food. There's all sorts of ways to use the things that the earth provides us to live, to generate electricity, to generate energy. We get all our fabric from the earth, our building material, the things that we use to make our houses, the glass, it's melted sand, you know what I'm saying? So I think as we adjust our rhythms and the planning of our years and our time cycles to be in sync with the earth, so much more, then we will form a much more respectful relationship with her, in a relationship where we reciprocate with her the love that she gives us, because it also burdens her when we are not healthy, when we are not feeling settled and sound. This economic system that we're in, which is supported by the political and social systems that we have, is one which not only extracts from the earth, but extracts from human beings. It extracts your labor in exchange, apparently, for money, for value, right? But oftentimes that value cannot compensate you for the time that you've spent away from your family, the time you've spent not resting, the time you've spent commuting to get to work. You know what I'm saying? So how do we start to really see ourselves as earthlings who deserve to live on this planet in peace without the stress of having to work to eke out a living? No animal is unemployed, no plant is unemployed, but somehow human beings are unemployed unless they are working for someone to give them a piece of paper which we have agreed has value, right? So how do we start to create value with through things that are not necessarily the fiat currency money that we are using?